All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming out this afternoon to recognize some of our best young authors in Medina County. My name is Mike Kovack, your Medina County Auditor, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual Memorial Day Essay Contest. Each year, with the assistance of my home VFW post, Veterans and Foreign Wars post number 1089 in Wadsworth, we sponsor this contest to challenge our junior high school students to contemplate the meaning and significance of Memorial Day. Each year, we're thoroughly impressed with the entries that we receive, and the judging, which is done by the employees of my office, is always difficult, and our 10 best essay authors are with us here today. I want to recognize a few members of my staff who are with us today and are helping out. Without them, this contest couldn't happen. We've got Mary Beth Gunther, Judy Rogers, Nancy Girton, and a brand new employee, Lauren Amalog. Please give them a nice round of applause. And we want to recognize the teachers who make this part of their curriculum. We have one of them with us today, Mr. Zach Sicciani from Cloverleaf. If you could stand up and we'll recognize him. And finally, I'm grateful and honored to have with us here today Chief Petty Officer Tim Ryan, retired from the United States Navy. While Tim and I are both from Wadsworth, we ended up meeting each other for the first time at Army combat training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We then spent the better part of a year together in Iraq. So please help me welcome Chief Petty Officer Tim Ryan from VFW 1089. In second place for our 8th grade winners, Allison Cipalla from Byzantiner Middle School.
The USS Gambier. It was the 4th day of 1944 when I was drafted for the war. The United States was running low on military forces, especially naval. A couple days later, I was picked up by a GMC CCKW, a 2 1/2 ton U.S. Army truck in my hometown, Minster, Ohio, along with 12 others. I was the youngest to get drafted at the age of 17. While the commander was checking off our names as we loaded the cargo truck, I could hear my mother yelling, "Don't take my baby! Charlie, don't leave me! I love you!" My father covered her ears and my mouth with his muscular figure. With a tear in his eye, he said to me, "Come back, son." I refused to look back. Their tears would have made me burst. I boarded the tall truck and blew them a kiss as the truck sped past. We traveled for more than 48 hours to San Diego, where I would embark on my first mission as a protector of the United States. During this strenuous, rugged expedition, we picked up 12 other men on the way. 2 from Wichita, Kansas, 7 from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and 3 from Sedona, Arizona. I had little conversation with one other draftee. His name was John Permonte. John was one of the 2 that boarded the truck in Wichita, Kansas. I asked him if he was going to serve on the USS Gambier Bay with me, and he believed he was. Within the 48 hours, I really got to know him. Who knew you could make a friend during a war experience? We got to San Diego on January 19, 1944. John and I loaded our things onto the bunk beds that we would sleep in during our time on the U.S. Gambier Bay, an escort carrier. In February of 1944, we finally launched out of the San Diego's dock to Pearl Harbor, along with 400 other troops. We flew in 84 replacement planes to the Enterprise CV-6. The Gambier then returned to the coast of Southern California. I made repairs to the harmed aircrafts that were almost destroyed in the attack on Pearl Harbor. The USS Gambier Bay traveled to the Leyte Gulf of Samar on October 25, 1944. Meanwhile, the Japanese fleet surrounded the Gambier in the Cevian Sea. The Japanese destroyed the Gambier's defense and backup. For the last blow to destroy the carrier, the largest Japanese battleship, called the Yamato, blew the engine of the USS Gambier. The carrier went down bow first. The captain screamed louder than the blowhorn itself. He screamed, "Jump ship! Jump ship!" I followed his command and jumped into the ice-cold ocean. I yelled for John, but he didn't answer. I yelled John's name even louder. I saw him about to jump off the highest dock, but before he could, the Japanese machine gun shot him down. I screamed and kicked and saw his body flail over the sinking ship's side. I swam aggressively to his bleeding body. I was crying with him in my arms, holding on to a life raft. He was my only friend on board. An hour after the last section of the carrier sunk, a large group of sharks came swimming towards us. The smell of the blood of everyone must have attracted them. I was almost killed, but I wouldn't let him fall. He deserves a true burial, with his friends and family. The sharks eventually swam away after everyone lay silently in the dark sea. The night passed and he kept bleeding. I couldn't tell whether he was still breathing or not. I held him for dear life. During the next night, a rescue crew flashed a bright light in my face and on 150 other survivors. We were all floating cautiously in the deep, dark blue sea. The rescue crew then lifted all the survivors to the aircraft first. Then they searched for any floating bodies, including John's. I got back to the base camp in San Diego. I was patched up and sent home. My mother cried so hard when I was back in her arms. My father was a little teary too. I, Charlie Hale, delivered the horrible news to John Primante's family. It was horrible to think what my parents could have had to go through if I was killed in action like John. I didn't want to think about it. All I know is that I'm glad to be alive after my traumatic past.
Allison Cipalla, ladies and gentlemen.